Hey, and we're back. I'm your host, BKP, and it's a beautiful spring morning in Blue Ridge, Georgia, and we're at Blue Jeans Pizza, and it's time for our segment, Ask the Doc. Thank you, Georgia Cancer Specialist. Dr. Whaley, good to have you back.
Thank you. Good to be
Been out doing a little traveling?
Yeah, I spent 4 days with my brother, who, as you know, is a federal judge and sits on the Ninth Circuit. And I have the highest degree of respect for the judge that just left us here. I think he's brought a great deal of good publicity to us in this region, and I understand his project really well. I've had friends who were advocates. I congratulate him. Talking about Judge Gorsuch and talking about it's a much bigger job than either you or I would be capable of doing, and I can just sit back and say I admire him.
Well, the Judge Wooster, I do have a lot of respect for. I've known him for years. I've been not watching a lot, but I don't know how Gorsuch sits there for 11 and 13 hours. It keeps getting questions, hypotheticals that he could rule on, and he can't really answer.
Well, he got the Ginsburg defense, you know.
Well, I was getting ready to say that's been labeled. Let's see, what is Supreme Court? They're going to bork you, right? Yeah, right. Remember? So, or the Ginsburg, what he's doing is called the Ginsburg defense. Yeah. So,
I thought that question, the tweet that the senator said, my wife wants to know how he can sit there for his, we won't go any farther with that.
Yes.
That's been the lightest part of the thing, I believe. And
so, how is your brother doing?
He's doing very well. I just have to say that he worships the law, and he made some arguments to me about an originalist versus being a non-originalist that I never thought of. You know, he said when the people want to know what the founding fathers meant when they wrote the Constitution, you have to remember that when they wrote the Constitution, only white people could vote. They all had to be male, and they all had to be property owners. And if you take that mindset and say, what did they mean about this, that, or the other thing, you'd be in a real hazard if you put an exact.
So he's looking at it in a little bit of a way of saying, now how do you take that and apply that to everything that was not included on the day the Constitution came into?
It makes you think a little bit more about the complexities when we say, well, like my Jane, you'll have her here in a little while, says, look, the Bible says, you know. Well, the Bible was written, you know, that part was written 4,000 years ago, not 2,000 years ago. That's what it says. So anyway, I enjoyed it. We played some golf, and we were very careful not to have any political discussions while Jane was around.
You do know she's going to be here in a minute,
yeah.
Okay.
Well, one day Jane didn't play golf, so we talked in the golf cart long enough for me to shut up and start talking about basketball and the weather and everything else.
I made my basketball picks. Do you like the basketball?
Oh yeah. And you had Javier. You had Javier winning there. You know, that's good.
You know, I tell you what, Kansas has me nervous because they are putting on a show. And I have North Carolina to win it all. I'm a UNC, North Carolina to win it all. And Kansas has me nervous right now. They really put on.
There are a lot of people who had Duke and North Carolina, and had all these ACC teams getting to the Elite Eight. They're getting whittled down here, so it's going to be.
Well, I pick some of my teams. I pick based on maybe some friendships or where the teams are located. I had to pick Michigan. They lost last night by 1 point, but I had to pick Michigan because I have an enormous amount of family in Michigan, and if I would have posted on Facebook anything other than that, oh wow, they would have got on me, so I had to take that. Mom's from West Virginia, got a lot of family in West Virginia, so I had to go WVU, and I lost that one. But so
I don't think you're supposed to gamble because of where.
Well, I didn't have any money.
I understand.
If money went on it, I might have won. Dr. Whaley, don't get me sidetracked. You know how easy that is. I have a question this week that somebody sent us, and always remember throughout the week, if you want to send Dr. Whaley a question for the week, send it to us, and we'll try to get it on the show. If not, we will make sure the doctor gets that question and in future episodes, make sure we cover it. When was gluten discovered to cause so many problems, and why didn't we know what it was till recently? And I like this question that came in because gluten, you know, everything's gluten-free now and it's supposed to be important, and I didn't know that 10 years ago. So what was I doing wrong? What did they save me from?
Well, first of all, you weren't doing anything wrong. And this opens up a real Pandora's box. What is attributed to gluten today in the popular media is a bunch of hype. Gluten and its real consequences were discovered 2,000 years ago. The year was 100 AD. This opens up the Paleolithic diet prescription sort of a discussion, and I'll make this as quick as I can, but Jane says, don't ask Bill the timer, he'll tell you how to build a watch. Humans evolved over a couple of 100 million years, and they were hunters and gatherers, so that our GI function was evolved to the diet that you pick stuff up off the ground and beat a squirrel over the head with a stone. And it was about 4,000 years ago in Mesopotamia, that would just say that's Iraq and Iran, where they began to take the stuff they were gathering in the woods and then put it in the ground, and up came sweet. So our GI tract is actually functions like a caveman's. As we began to refine and to grow wheat in about the time of Christ, there was the recognition that there were people who ate well, who lost dramatic amounts of weight, became malnourished and died. And that was the first discussion and scientific writing of an intolerance to grain. If you go back then to about 1800, there was a well-written group of papers about, again, people who became malnourished, very, very thin, just look at concentration camp sort of a thought, who ate normal food and a normal diet, and they were intolerant to normal foods. At that point in time, somebody thought up the idea this may be related to carbohydrates, and in about 1920, a guy took 10 patients. It's hard to find 10 patients with this disorder, but found 10 people with this disorder and fed 8 of them only bananas, and the other 2 continued to eat regular food. All 8 that ate only bananas got well, and the 2 that ate regular food died. So it was clear that there was something about the regular diet and the grain that got that you could cure with a diet of just bananas. Now we go to World War II in the Netherlands, where there was famine, and the children who had this wasting disease from the regular diet suddenly got well when the famine came. There wasn't any wheat and there wasn't any bread, so they were eating potatoes and eating other things. And then the Americans and the British began to drop supplies to the famining people there in the Netherlands. And when they began to drop bread and the children began to eat bread, their disease came back. So a pediatrician in 1945 wrote an article that bread caused this disorder. Then from that point forward, we learned in the 70s and 80s that it was wheat, primarily wheat, a little bit in oats and other things. And then gluten as a specific piece of the enzyme gluten was discovered, and now it is understood that this disease of wasting to the point of malnutrition, anemia, and death is caused by an allergy to gluten. That's got nothing to do with you know, my husband's mean and hateful, and my kid flunked third grade, and my hair's falling out, and all of these other things that have been attributed to gluten sensitivity. So if I could stick just 1 second, I'll go back and give you let you just think about two things. In the 1970s and 1980s, two doctors wrote a book about the yeast connection. You can remember the yeast connection was a thought that an allergy to yeast caused just about everything that could happen to you, from mental retardation to menstrual problems to headaches to everything else. And that the idea was that 1 in 3 people in Western Europe and in North America, Canada, the United States had a yeast allergy. A huge industry developed then about yeast-free foods. There were even big clinics where people went and they got desensitized to yeast. Well, it turned out to be a scam. Their yeast sensitivity occurs in about 12 or 15 people in a year, not 1 out of 3. The second one that it was very, very common, and you're maybe not old enough to remember it very well, was zinc deficiency. A zinc deficiency can make everything happen to you, from your hair falling out to your toenails turning crooked, in every organ system. But zinc deficiency really occurs only in 2 geographic areas of the world, one in sub-Saharan Africa and the other in southern South Asia. It doesn't occur in Western Europe, doesn't occur in the United States. But for about 8 or 10 years, everything that happened to anybody was blamed on zinc deficiency. People wrote books about it, there were talk show programs about it. Everybody got on the zinc supplement of some sort, and then the scientific community blew the whole thing out of the water, and it fell apart. Well, here's the issue with the gluten sensitivity. Once a blood test, specific blood test for the allergy to gluten was found, then it is possible to test children with digestive disorders and people who are having bloating and anemia and these other systems, to test their blood to see, do you have an antibody to gluten? And then if you have an antibody to gluten, that's not all there is to it, because everybody in this room's got an antibody to some of this pollen in the air here,
Right.
but all of us aren't asthmatic. And so that's sort of an analogy to that. So the next step in diagnosing a gluten deficiency, intolerance, is to do a biopsy of the mucosa in the small bowel. And that's easy to do, but it's a diagnostic test. And then a normal mucosa has a bunch of little things that look like that in there, like the rest of the GI tract. And in gluten, they're all shriveled up. I mean, in sprue, the disease is shriveled up. The incidence of that is 1 in 130 to 1 in 180 people of Western European extraction, like the population of the United States. And it can only be diagnosed by a specific blood test. Everybody doesn't need the mucosal biopsy. And so people who actually have gluten sensitivity with proper bloating, malnutrition, anemia, and everything else, they've got to go to their doctor, get the right kind of blood test, get the proper referral, and then get on a gluten-free diet. The idea that a gluten-free diet is going to help you lose weight, or is going to improve your blood pressure, is going to improve your digestion, or do anything else, is a bunch of hooey. And if you follow a really strict gluten-free diet, it's deficient in multiple micronutrients that you don't get if you eat a gluten-free diet. So when a physician or a nutritionist gives you a gluten-free diet, they give you a specific list of vitamins you've got to take to supplement that diet. So when was gluten discovered? Say in 100 AD, that was part of that question. When was it actually identified as being wheat? That would be World War II, when they dropped the bread to the starving kids in the Netherlands. And when did they actually identify the enzyme on the wheat, in the wheat, as being this one specific piece of the chemical gluten, that would be about 1980. And that was when they started doing small bowel biopsies. And then the for-profit nutritional industry and the talk shows and everything else began to hype the gluten. And most of what you hear today is attributed to gluten. Gluten intolerance is incorrect and improper, and the people aren't gluten sensitive or gluten free, and the only way they're going to know it is to go get a blood test.
Well, here's how I see it on that end. The marketing side is they have gone in our stores and they have labeled everything gluten-free, and put it next to the item that is not gluten-free. And now, if you'll notice, this is my comment, the gluten-free usually costs a little more.
Yes.
So, and I didn't know before they put the signs, I didn't know if gluten was a problem for me or not. So I'll give you my example. I like popcorn.
I can tell you by looking at you that it's not a problem, because what did I tell you that the legitimate symptoms of gluten insufficiency are? Is you become malnourished.
Right.
And look like a World War II concentration camp victim. And I don't know how good your mirrors are in your home.
Easy there.
You don't look like a World War II concentration camp victim, and neither do I.
So I go to the store
all the time.
I go to the store. I like popcorn, and I don't get microwave. Not that there's anything wrong with it. I don't get microwave. I don't get it in a bag whatever.
Me either.
I get a bag of popcorn. I make it on the stove. I like my popcorn.
I at least have gotten to the hot air popper.
No, I
make
make it every day.
Every day. Okay.
Yeah, I eat popcorn every day. I eat popcorn. Yes.
I prescribe that for you because of the fiber.
I eat popcorn
Tell people.
every single day.
Dr.
So
Whaley
I go to the store and I'm looking at my popcorn, and one says gluten-free and the next one says not gluten-free, and I'm thinking, what's the big deal? It's popcorn. I mean, how does this popcorn in this bag really extract something that's not in this bag, and this bag's 75 cents cheaper?
They didn't.
So the point is I'm buying the full gluten. I'm using full gluten popcorn.
Buy the full gluten popcorn.
I have two more. Go ahead.
Unfortunately, there is no regulation of the food production industry that defines gluten-free. And you'll recall the discussions that we've had here before about all natural
Right.
or organic. I mean, and that doesn't mean squat either until you get to specific organizations that did it.
Well, I like
free-range chicken.
I like the
and all
one.
that.
I like the one chicken commercial now. I love the one chicken commercial because it says chickens that say that they're not shot with this, that, and the other thing, and the commercial comes on and says that's been the national rule. I mean that is the rule. You can't do that for years. Right. So those people that are coming on and making a commercial saying our chicken is this, they're not telling you anything.
Right.
I will say one more thing on that note. I want this question. We don't have time for all three. I want this question, and it has to be about a minute. But the question is, if I work out to help promote weight loss, does it matter what time I do it within the day?
The answer to that question is no. It doesn't. A calorie burned is a calorie burned. If you do it late before you go to bed, it can interfere with sleep. So that would be important. If you did it 10 o'clock at night and went to bed at 10:45, that workout will interfere with your sleep, not improve it, because you're increasing your metabolic rate. But basically, no, the time of day doesn't make a difference.
Well, Dr. Whaley, we're glad you spent some time with your brother and stayed away from some politics and enjoyed golf. And I'm glad you came home to get back into the politics and still enjoy golf.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I'm not even sure where this is going to go today with this healthcare bill thing. I've gotten terribly disappointed in the ability of like-minded people to see how they're like-minded and get in the same foxholes. I said weeks ago, my success in bringing groups of physicians and warring people together is You are not my enemy. And we're in the same foxhole. And I think this whole Republican Party and most of the people that are in the Democratic Party, if you could just get these people to understand, we got this whole economic thing out there. We got the Middle East, we got Russia and everything else. We're all in the same foxhole. We're all Americans here. Let's quit picking the, as I say, the fly feces out of the pepper. I mean, and get together and come up with some reasonable set of rules and get it done.
Well, I'll tell you what, you're welcome to stick around for our 9 o'clock,
Yeah, well,
but you
I can't. I got my boss.
You have to get to work.
Place.
All right, okay, you're welcome to stick around. Dr. Whaley, thank you, Georgia Cancer Specialist. Every week, Dr. Whaley at 8:15, if you have a question, you can email that to chief@fetchernews.com throughout the week. Again, we're glad to have you back. You have a nice day, sir.
All right, well, we missed a whole bunch of good
I
stuff.
got to tell the judge it's time for him to go to work. How often do I get to do it? Now I get to tell the doctor, you got to go to work.
All right, we'll bring up that other stuff about the birth control pills protecting you from cancer. And
oh, gosh.
breast implants.
All right. We're going to take a break. When we get back, we're in North Georgia here where we're at. I don't know where you're watching this morning. And we're always having events. There's a lot of events going on. So the question is, what about event insurance? Do you need insurance? What are some of the questions you may have? We have Sandy Simpson going to be with us. Sandy Simpson is going to be with us from Norton Insurance right on the other side of this commercial to answer some of those questions. Take us to break.
It's a new year. New you at Schottenkirk Ford.